Many times, I've asked the question, how can I be human in the face of human-driven mass extinction? And the only answer that ever comes calling back is an echo of that question. How can I be? In 2017, I was confronting overwhelming species shame, and it was shutting down my ability to create art. But as an artist, I understood that the only way is through, and the way through is always curiosity. So I became curious about what it would be like to fully inhabit my experience of shame, to walk within it every day, to know it, and to be it. I decided to put myself in the role of a meteorite, to process what it means to be a perpetrator of mass extinction. Today, I will tell you the story of my time as the human meteorite, and the surprise of aliveness that I felt out in the field, where all experiences, beautiful, painful, and ordinarily alike, brought great gifts in the form of lessons. In November 2017, I travelled to Point Arena, California, and for 30 days, from full moon to full moon, I dug an impact crater into the earth using only hand tools, working routinely to the naturally imposed limits of the daylight and my mental or physical capacity. I planned to spend this time contemplating the irreconcilably huge story of human impact on our planet. I brought with me a version of that story that described humanity as corrupt, selfish, and greedy. I perceived myself as part of a lineage of violent abusers who knowingly facilitated the genocide of fellow humans, animals, and plants alike. Our fate as the ultimate destroyers of the planet seemed to me as inarguable as rock, as predestined as the trajectory of an asteroid. I felt this shame as a tremendous heaviness. I did not know what I was doing, but I was certain that this was the way through. To spend time digging, in repetition, in ceremony with the land, performing a symbolic act of violence, being the violence, so that I can witness it within myself. This was my offering of atonement, and it was the first step through the way of shame. I had no idea how I would go about digging a meteor crater. Where a meteor makes a sudden violent impact, the human impact on the planet is a slow and gradual, almost mundane destruction. As the human meteorite, I reframe our impact as a slow catastrophe. In the first moments when I broke ground, each shovel load seemed impossibly heavy. I had no idea how I could possibly sustain this work, and so I suppressed my panic and I kept digging. The process of digging has a mysterious effect of unearthing memories and emotions lodged in the body. As it turns out, I found I couldn't contemplate the big questions of human species crimes against the planet, because instead I found myself drowning in emotions and memories from my own life. Sometimes when I was digging, I would just have to stop because some deep, old trauma that I had buried would rise up and overwhelm me. All these past wounds came to the surface and demanded a reckoning. They all must be faced, felt, and forgiven. As I did this process again and again, I realized that this is what healing looks like. It looks like simply sitting with the emotion and letting it pass through you. I found that to contend with the biggest story of our species, I had to make peace with my small place within it. My life becomes functionally very simple. I wake up in the morning before sunrise, I walk out to the impact site, I salute the sun and the moon and begin digging. At sundown, I walk back to the house, I light a fire, stretch, cook my dinner, take an hour-long bath, and go to bed. A friend reached out to me to ask me about my sanity, and I replied that I've never felt saner. Digging on rainy days is especially hard, The ground is slippery and the soil is heavy. The deeper I dig, the harder the soil. But on one rainy day, the centre of the crater opens up to this radiant yellow earth. It is as though I am digging towards the light of the sun, and I am so moved by how beautiful it is. Another day, I'm stunned to find a ribbon of brilliant orange sediment. I learned that this is the mineralised remains of what was once an immense redwood forest, standing where the meadow is now. These trees were casualties in the rampant industry of logging that swept through California almost a century ago. I stop and I witness the sadness contained in this joyful colour. One of the most profound teachers I encountered is the worms. At first there were no worms, and this was kind of shocking to me. But the first worms I see appear after it rained, but they weren't at all what I was expecting. They appeared as these tiny pink balls, all tied up in knots, and I've never seen worms do this, and it was truly a disturbing sight. I was so horrified by the first couple I saw that I didn't even want to look at them. But eventually I forced myself to unflinch and get curious. I took off my glove and I sat one of these pink, fragile knots in my hand. And at first it was dead still. And then the electricity of my skin started waking it up, and slowly it began moving. I was transfixed as this tiny creature unwound itself in my palm. And it was unbelievably cathartic to watch. Eventually, it got stuck. And using the tips of my fingers, which were incredibly clumsy and stiff from digging, I gently teased the knot free. And then I watched it stretch its mangled body, and it seemed so painful, but also incredibly liberating. I ended up getting completely sidetracked rescuing worms during my pauses in digging. But after a while, I noticed that they were perfectly capable of unknotting themselves. Eventually, I only came across robust, healthy worms, and I would enjoy picking them up and watching them dance in the palm of my hand. I found such deep kinship and love for these worms, because their transformation felt like my transformation. These are the kinds of stories I shared over the course of the month, through live transmissions that I gave every day at sunrise to a globally scattered audience, in which I would impart the intimate aspects of my experiences as the human meteorite. It's been more difficult to cope with the emotional and the psychological strain, but in those capacities I feel so much stronger now. By sharing my thoughts and feelings from my isolated island, I put my faith in truth-telling as part of a larger process of sustained personal transformation. But I had not anticipated how much these broadcasts would become a life-giving tether to a council of witnesses who willingly received my honesty and trust. Here's another story. This is Kathy. Kathy was an important visitor for me. She'd been riding rescue horses through this land for 20 plus years, and she would chat to me as I dug. But then one day, Kathy asked, "Why would you come to a beautiful place like this and make it look like a bomb hit it?" This question felt like a punch to the gut. But instead of reacting, I paused and I looked inside. And there, I found Kathy's pain inside my own heart. Instead of explaining to Kathy what I'm doing, I shared in her grief. I talked about how painful it must be to see a place that you love transformed so rapidly and violently by the hand of a stranger, and I asked her for her story. I take it all in. Kathy shares with me her gift for taking care of animals. She is here to share something of the human spirit, and as the human meteorite, her story is one of the things my impact has unearthed. It is as important as any event I witness in the field. After this, we became friends. I believe that when aspects of the truth are painful, yes, they are hard to bear, But it's not the truth we're handling. It's how the truth emotionally impacts us that needs care. So to say that people can't handle the truth, what is really being said is that people cannot care for themselves. But I think we can handle the truth, as long as we care for each other. When I became human meteorite, I learned what it means to be human. And I could not anticipate that much of the journey would depend on maintaining a state of open honesty and enduring deep uncertainty. And the very nature of uncertainty is that it is the soil from which hope grows. Shame shuts down the imagination, but it is the emotion most often appealed to and triggered when we deliver information about the ecological crisis we find ourselves in. If we are to find a way to effectively act to change our habits of environmental destruction, we are going to need our imaginations. We are contending with the largest challenges our species has ever confronted, and I believe that if we can't move past a place of shame, I don't think we can move forward. Counter to the idea that you create impact through shock, I realize that to create lasting impact, transformation happens through slow and repeated, clear and consistent, deep, directed intention. I'm going to leave you with these moments from my last day as the human meteorite.
I hope that I'm able to hold on to the memory of what it is to be this truthful every day as I return and am no longer meteorite. I'll still be a little bit meteorite. Some transformations are irreversible.
Patience is knowing that the only way to be free is to be unafraid of what resides within us. The price of that freedom is that we need to sacrifice the comfort of a contained mind so that we can finally be generous enough to be imperfect. We can change the world when we commit to being a part of it. We can change it if we let the world change us. Letting go of everything we think we know brings out the most joyful luminosity in the present, which I call love. Thank you.